So, as we get closer to Christmas, it oftentimes happens that we get repetitive readings because, frankly, there isn't all that much written about the early life of Christ and the incarnation, the conception of Jesus up to his birth, and really even thereafter. But the themes that run through these same readings are very rich, and there are many. And so it's not difficult to go through the same reading multiple times and pick out different parts. This is, in fact, a spiritual prayer exercise that we call Lectio Divina. Reading a reading, meditating on it, reading it again, meditating on it, reading it again, meditating on it. It's a way of personal, private prayer. It's also a way of liturgical prayer. And so what we're doing today, what the church is doing in this repetition of reading, is really kind of just going deeper each time. For instance, as you ascend a mountain path, you wrap around the mountain, you wrap around the mountain, you wrap around the mountain. It's the same mountain you're going around time and time again, but each time you get higher and gain a greater perspective. This past Sunday, we heard this reading from Isaiah when Jerusalem's surrounded by their enemies and Ahaz is on the wall and he's very afraid, and Isaiah comes up and says, "Ask for a sign." This is the moment that the prophecy, the very clear and direct prophecy of the Messiah, was given, that he was going to be conceived and born of a virgin, a maiden who has not yet married. I pointed out on Sunday that Ahaz's response was incredulous. His response was insincere. Isaiah gives him the opportunity to ask for a sign, and Ahaz says, "I will not ask, I will not tempt the Lord." Almost like he's not seeing that the prophet is coming with an offer from the Lord, but rather he sees the prophet as an enemy who's trying to trick him and trap him into doing something evil, so that the prophet can then say to the people, "See, all this evil is coming upon you because of Ahaz." He's so worldly minded. He is so entrenched in the politics and the political perspective of the world. He's so entrenched in the temporal and in the limited that he cannot see that something grand is happening before him. He's being invited to participate in that grandeur, and he's failing to do so because he has not only limited faith, but he has ill will in his heart. He's a suspicious man. And we know that only the thief thinks that everyone's out to steal from him. Only the liar thinks that no one can be trusted. And Ahaz shows himself to be both a thief and a liar. So, we spend a moment considering this because yesterday and today's gospel show a juxtaposition between two very similar situations with two very different outcomes. Yesterday, you'll remember that we have the angel Gabriel coming to Zechariah in the temple, right? So already we have the same sort of situation, but one is happening in this temple, this grand place. This place where it's supposed to be filled with faith in God and expectation of the great things that God would do. And here's Zechariah, a high priest, in the Holy of Holies, offering incense, the highest form of worship that's being offered to the Lord in this most esteemed place. And the angel shows up. Of all the places in the world, this should be the most nonchalant situation. Oh, hi, Gabriel. Continuing on, right? It's the temple. Of course the angels are there. Of course God is there. And yet John responds to the angel in the same level of suspicion, the same level of incredulity that Ahaz has when the prophet Isaiah says, "Come and ask for a sign." The angel Gabriel comes to Zechariah and says, "Hey, your wife's going to have a baby." He's been wanting a baby his whole life. And God shows up, sends his messenger, "Hey, I'm going to do this for you." "Oh, you missed the boat. It's been too long. It couldn't possibly happen." His answer to the angel is exactly the same words that Mary gives to the angel Gabriel, which we're going to see in a moment. The exact same words, only it's filled with suspicion. How can this be? How can this be? My wife is aged, blah, 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 right? Well, he's struck dumb. Why he's struck dumb is because in order to complete the ritual that he is in the midst of, he goes in on behalf of the people and worships God, but then he comes out afterwards on behalf of God and utters the blessing over the people. He's struck dumb, not for some weird reason. He's not struck dumb for some arbitrary reason, right? He's forbidden to speak because he has lost the dignity, the responsibility to go and utter the blessing of God over the people because of his lack of faith. And because the blessing that is going to be uttered is going to be more perfectly uttered by John, the voice crying out in the wilderness, his son now conceived in the womb of Elizabeth, his wife. And it's not until he proclaims his son's name, the fulfillment of what God is just saying to John here, or to Zechariah here, will his tongue be released and he'll be able to speak freely again. Right? So this is a really powerful curse that's put on John. It's reminiscent of the curse of our first parents, that there has been a dignity lost because of the lack of faith. Here, or because of in the garden, it was a dignity lost because of disobedience. Here, it's a dignity lost because of a lack of faith in God, that God is going to work wonders, that he's going to do the remarkable things for his people that he's promised to do from time immemorial. And then we switch scenes and we come to today's reading in Luke, in a town of Galilee called Nazareth. Can anything good come from Nazareth? We go from the heights of the temple, high on the mountain, with smoke and candles and bread and priests and cushions and God only knows what, probably 3 cats, down to a little town in Galilee called Nazareth, a little podunk village, where the angel Gabriel shows up to a woman in a weird situation. Right? And he says, you're going to conceive and bear a son, and you're going to name him Emmanuel. And Mary says the same words that John says. How can this be? Though she says it in a questioning, probing wonder. Really? Really? How? That's awesome. That's wonderful. That's amazing. I don't know what this means. Quite frankly, I'm terrified. But if you say it's going to happen, holy cow, tell me. It's very different from, no, my wife's old and she nags me too much. Just as Jesus says time and time again, it's not what man puts into his body that defiles him, it's what comes out from within that defiles. What we see here is a response of the heart to God. So many times in our lives, we find ourselves in different situations. Sometimes they're pleasant, sometimes they're unpleasant. Sometimes the pleasant ones are worse off for us than the unpleasant ones, because the pleasant ones distract us from eternity. When life is really good, you could just kind of stay there, couldn't you? Just kind of chill in life. Everything's good. Life's grand. It's wonderful. And we have a temptation to forget God. Here, Zechariah is weighted down with this one really deep loss. But day to day, he probably has a wonderful life. He's a priest in the temple, doing his thing with the cushions and the cats, right? I mean, it's very comfortable. It sounds like somebody else I know. It's all very comfortable, and it can get distracting, right? But then you go to a place of poverty. You go to a place of littleness. You go to a place of loneliness. You go to a place of isolation. You go to a place of loss. You go to a place of inconsequence, of being overlooked. And there you find when God shows up, he is ready to be received. It's a good seed ground. Right? When we struggle in our life, it's not the worst thing in the world. When the most tragic thing happens to us in our life, it's not the worst thing in the world. Because the Lord is preparing us to receive him. To receive him in our tragedy, receive him in our crisis, receive him amidst the difficulties of the crosses of our day-to-day life. When we struggle day in and day out with this one thing or these many things, he's preparing us to receive him so that when he does do a wonder, we can recognize him and say, and give glory and praise to his name. Holy cow, how did you do that? That's amazing. Do it again. The wonder of a child, of a little girl over the hardened heart of a worldly, wizened old man. And at Christmas time, what we celebrate is that rejuvenation, that renewal of heart. That God no longer exists among us in stone tablets and in stone temples, but that he takes on a human heart. It takes on human flesh. See, I make all things new. And he revitalizes for each one of us, in the midst of the difficulty of our lives, our ability to wonder at the majesty of God and all that he's done for us.